Sir Nicholas Stern said, former chief economist for the World Bank, very conservative, engaged by the Blair government to look at the economic impact of climate change, is, well, we can take the hard choices and we should be aiming at a 20 or 30% reduction by 2020 and 60 to 90% by 2050. The Greens are in the middle of that range. And it is going to hit our economy now. It might knock 1% off gross domestic product around the world. We're going to have to pull in our belt 1/100th to achieve that end. What if we don't? Because there isn't a political leader outside the Greens and the Democrats in this country who's prepared to ask that of Australians and to take a lead and explain why, and look kids in the eye and say, we're doing it because of you. Well, if we leave it to the end of if we don't do anything, we leave it to our grandkids, it'll knock 20% off their GDP. And George Bush and John Howard say, we're not going to take the 1% cut. We're not going to do that. And ExxonMobil doesn't want it. And the big coal companies operating in Australia, and all BHP Billiton's got as you know, a quotient of Australian shareholders, a big one, but not a majority, are owned outside Australia. The 23 billion they're getting for the coal exports go elsewhere in the world. And of course they'll claim jobs, 28,000 jobs in coal mining in Australia. But there's 63,000 jobs dependent on the Barrier Reef, which the scientists tell us if we keep doing what we're doing, has a 90% chance of being bleached, dead, done for by mid-century, by the time our kids are around. Oh, well, they can look after that. John Howard says he will not threaten one job in the coal industry. They closed a Telstra call centre in Launceston this afternoon, 257 workers out, because Howard has privatised Telstra. Is he going to help them? Of course he's not. But the coal industry is a different thing. And I went out to Blackwater because they said, we read the Courier Mail, that bastion of the truth which comes out each morning here in Brisbane. The place where I'm staying, they said you can circle this paper or that paper, and I really tried hard to circle the Courier Mail. But I thought, no, you can always get one out of the bin. I'll get one as I go later on. And I believe in recycling. But they had a front page thing saying Brown wants to, I've forgotten, take the jobs off 28,000 miners. You might remember it. Was there one Saturday morning. Full on, had a picture of me, half a page. But the story was even uglier because it said that I was determined to take the jobs of these people. And curiously enough, that was the only front page story in the whole of Australia that day which didn't have the name of the journalist next to it. Because it was the editor who wrote that story. The Sydney Telegraph ran the same one with different figures for the New South Wales coal industry, and it was based on a lie. Because I had made it very clear that we should take 3 years looking at what we're going to do about this massive coal industry, exporting and phasing it out, working out a plan as to how we're going to deal with it and phase it out. But they said he wants to close the whole coal industry down in 3 years' time. Well, George Bush threatened the coal industry in Australia this week. I'll come back to Blackwater in a moment. Blackwater's down near Glen Innes, you know. That's where Mushroom Rock, that fantastic granite column with the great big wide one sitting on top. If you ever go to Blackwater, go and have a look at Mushroom Rock in the granite country. George Bush said, we've got to set a target to reduce greenhouse gases. He's had a conversion. That means we have to move across to energy efficiency and to the other alternatives that Larissa spoke about. That means coal is going to take a big hit. And last year they were predicting it would be a 30% downturn by 2030, and now it's obviously going to be more. And as I said to the coal miners out at Blackwater, not the Greens coming to get your job. It's the reality of climate change. And it is going to hit hard, and this government says keep doing what you're doing. The Germans are moving renewable energy factories into their coal mining areas. And they've created 60,000 jobs in the last 3 years in renewable energy. They're streeting the field with the technology. What's John Howard doing? Well, we've got slither cell technology which reduces the cost of solar panels by 75%. Down there in the Australian National University, there's 40 people in white coats with PhDs, fantastic scientists, who've come up with this technology. It's not a pipe dream. It's being produced by Origin Energy in a pilot factory in Adelaide. Cuts the cost by 75%. John Howard defunded them, took their money away. And that technology is now going to go to Beijing or to Berlin, as 3 other leading solar technologies. If you put a solar hot water service, I'm getting a new one on the roof of the house I live in Tasmania at the moment. It comes from technology from Sydney University, which is now owned in Berlin and is in 95% of the solar hot water services now being sold around the world. And he talks about looking after the Australian economy. When I brought a sun fund bill to kickstart solar around Australia, particularly rural and regional Australia, into the Senate in 1998, Labor and Liberal voted it down, even though it was cost neutral to the taxpayers. It would have created 50,000 jobs then in rural Australia. Well, we were producing the same amount of solar panels as Japan back in 1989, just before that. Now we're producing 1% of the world's solar panels and Japan's producing 50%. That's the difference. And whichever way you look at it, this country is being massively mismanaged by the Howard government. They can come up with their statistics for now, but we've got to look at what's coming down the line. And it's a massive period of lost opportunity. And history will judge it that way. Will Kevin Rudd make the big difference? No, he'll make some differences. I think we need a change of government in Canberra. I think the Americans have got it right. They change their presidents every 8 years. We could do worse than to have a similar rule about heads of government in this country, but we don't have one. And hopefully the election will see us change. But when we do, it's going to need more than Labor. Also, too close to the big end of town and too far away from the average working family that they talk about in this country, and certainly the grandchildren coming down the line.